When you close your eyes and picture a truly high-performing school, there's like a very specific, almost cinematic image that usually comes to mind for you, right?
Oh, absolutely. You probably picture incredible teachers commanding a room, pacing in front of a whiteboard.
Yeah, exactly. You think of highly innovative lesson plans, brightly colored hallways, deeply engaged students raising their hands to answer a question. We tend to focus entirely on well, I guess you could call it the poetry of education.
Right, the poetry. That's a really good way to put it.
But today, we're going to look behind the curtain of the plumbing. We're going to examine the hidden machinery that makes absolutely all of that possible. Because before a single lesson is taught, before a textbook is even opened, there is this massive, invisible infrastructure that has to be built, tested, and fiercely maintained.
Yeah, we definitely romanticize the classroom experience, and for very good reason. But fundamentally, a school is one of the most highly regulated, remarkably complex organizations on the planet.
Oh, totally.
It operates under municipal, state, and federal constraints that would honestly make a lot of Fortune 500 executives sweat.
That is such a wild thought.
Right. What we're exploring today is how operational excellence isn't just some administrative bonus or, a nice to have. It's the absolute prerequisite for academic success. You just cannot have that beautiful classroom experience if the basic systems holding the building together are fractured.
I love that framing. And to guide us through this invisible machinery, we're doing a deep dive into a really fascinating source document we received. It's the executive profile of La'Shelle Lofton. She's the founder of the Lofton Group, LLC.
Yeah, and her career is just incredible.
It really is. Our mission today is to map out this unseen infrastructure of education using her career as our blueprint. Because when you look at her resume, it completely shatters the illusion that schools just sort of organically come together through, sheer willpower and good intentions.
It provides this rare top-down view of the sheer mechanical grit required to get a school off the ground and to keep it running legally, financially, and operationally. This is a profile of someone who basically builds the foundation that everyone else gets to stand on.
Okay, let's unpack this from the very beginning, the startup phase. Because before a teacher can even think about teaching, the physical and operational foundation has to be built completely from scratch.
Right. Day zero, basically.
Exactly. According to our source, Lofton has over 15 years of experience in school operations. And since 2011, she has played a major role in the startup and operational readiness of approximately 15 schools across Ohio, Indiana, and Tennessee.
Which is a massive undertaking.
It's staggering. Just the checklist involved here is mind-boggling. We're talking about securing a certificate of occupancy, managing health department compliance, coordinating fire inspections, assessing facility readiness, and then designing the front office workflow.
That's a lot of spinning plates.
Looking at this list, launching a school sounds less like opening a classroom and more like launching a small city or like a highly regulated corporate startup. The logistics of just getting the doors legally open are insane.
What's fascinating here is the absolute rigidity of the dependencies involved. Like in the tech startup world, you might launch a software product that's a little buggy, right? You push it out to the public and you just patch it a week later.
Right. Move fast and break things.
Exactly. The whole mantra is move fast and break things.
Yeah.
But you absolutely cannot do that with the school. You cannot beta test a fire code.
No, definitely not.
You can't iterate on health department compliance while 300 students are already eating in the cafeteria.
The fire marshal definitely does not care about your innovative math curriculum.
They do not care at all. If a contractor forgets to file a single piece of paperwork and your certificate of occupancy is delayed by a week, the entire launch just halts. The doors literally do not open. And then parents are suddenly left scrambling for last-minute childcare. Teachers are locked out of their classrooms, and the public trust in that brand new institution is immediately fractured before the first bell even rings.
That's a PR nightmare.
It's devastating. What this profile reveals about Lofton's role is that she operates as a systems builder who anticipates those friction points months in advance. Coordinating facility readiness means sequencing dozens of municipal, state, and private entities so that they all greenlight the building at the exact same moment.
And it goes way beyond just getting the building up to code. I noticed in her profile that her startup responsibilities include things like administrative staffing support and front office design and workflow creation.
Yes, the workflow creation is huge.
To a layperson, designing a front office sounds like, picking out which desk goes near the window. But I'm guessing it's a bit more complex than interior decorating.
It is actually a high-stakes exercise in traffic engineering and crisis management. Think about the first 20 minutes of a typical school day. At 8:15 a.m., you have a tidal wave of conflicting needs hitting a single room simultaneously. You have a parent dropping off sensitive custody paperwork. You have a crying kindergartner with a fever.
Oh, boy.
You have 3 substitute teachers who have never been in the building and don't know how to log into the system. And you have a delivery driver dropping off 30 boxes of printer paper.
Just absolute chaos in a 100-square-foot room.
Total chaos. If you haven't physically and procedurally designed that workflow before day 1, the office manager is pivoting between a secure student database and a sick child while trying to sign for a package. It is instant burnout.
I can't even imagine.
By focusing on workflow design, Lofton is essentially mapping out the physical separation of tasks. The substitute sign-in needs to be isolated from the tardy student line. The secure files need to be accessible without turning your back to the front door.
That makes so much sense.
She is building the shock absorbers for the school so that when that 8:15 a.m. rush hits, the staff can actually handle it without dropping a ball.
But getting the physical building legal and mapping out the lobby traffic is really only the physical half of the battle. The moment a student actually walks through those doors, an entirely different invisible machine has to turn on.
Right, the digital side.
Yeah, this naturally leads us to the school's digital nervous system. And looking at the source material, this is a massive chunk of Lofton's expertise.
It's arguably the most complex and least understood part of modern school operations.
It really looks like it. The profile lists her expertise in multiple student information systems, or SIS, things like Infinite Campus, Progress Book, Power School, and School Admin, which I guess is now Final Site Enrollment.
Yeah, those are the big ones.
And then we get into this massive burden of state reporting and compliance. The list is dense. We are talking about EMEOS reporting, state funding, OEDS, OD takes, special education reporting, data validation, error resolution, and audit preparation.
That's a lot of acronyms.
So many acronyms. Now, I want to play devil's advocate here for a second. To someone outside the weeds of education, hearing terms like data validation and e-commerce reporting just sounds like bureaucratic red tape. It sounds like endless, mindless data entry. Is checking a demographic box on a screen really that critical to the survival of the school?
It is incredibly easy to look at an alphabet soup of acronyms like AMI, which stands for Education Management Information System in Ohio, or ODDX, which handles data exchange between districts, and just dismiss them as mere red tape.
Right, it sounds so dry.
But we really need to establish the stakes here, because they are existential. Data integrity in these systems is directly tied to the financial lifeline of the institution. Public schools and charter schools are funded based on enrollment, attendance, and specific student demographics.
Wait, so all this data entry isn't just for a filing cabinet somewhere. It's essentially the school's revenue cycle.
It is the entire revenue cycle. Every time a student is logged into a student information system, that data is eventually aggregated, validated, and sent to the state. The state looks at those numbers and says, okay, you have this many students attending this many days with this specific set of socioeconomic factors.
And then they write the check.
Exactly. They say, here is the exact dollar amount you are entitled to so you can keep the lights on and pay your teachers. If a school's front office inputs the data incorrectly, or if they fail to resolve software errors during the data validation phase, the school simply does not get the money.
Okay, let's unpack that with an analogy. EMIS reporting sounds a lot like the pinch point in an hourglass.
Oh, I like that.
The top half of the hourglass is this massive, chaotic swirl of daily school life attendance records, test scores, who needs a speech therapist, who qualifies for free lunch. All of that data has to funnel down and squeeze through this tiny pinch point, the state reporting software in perfect order.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. And the crucial part of that analogy is what sits in the bottom half of the hourglass. It isn't sand, it's state and federal funding.
Oh, wow.
If that pinch point gets clogged with data errors because a staff member didn't know how to code a student's residency correctly in a system like OEDS or ODDEX, the funding stops flowing. Millions of dollars can be delayed or permanently withheld just due to poor data quality.
That entirely reframes it. I mean, if a corporate payroll department forgot to check a box and the entire company's revenue was delayed by a month, there would be a board-level investigation.
Heads would roll.
Absolutely. But in a school, we just assume this stuff happens magically in the background.
Yeah.
And it gets even heavier when you look at the special education reporting side of her profile.
It does. It becomes a matter of civil rights and legal compliance. Students with individualized education programs, or IEPs, require specific resources dictated by federal law. We're talking about speech therapists, intervention specialists, and accessible technology.
Which is not cheap.
Not at all. The school relies on state and federal funds to hire those professionals and buy that equipment. If the special education reporting is flawed, the money meant for those specific, highly vulnerable students doesn't arrive.
That's heartbreaking.
It is. So when Lofton is doing error resolution or audit preparation, she is fundamentally protecting the most vulnerable students in the building. She is translating their legal rights into operational reality.
Which means she handles the actual implementation of these systems too.
Yeah.
Getting a new school set up on Infinite Campus or Power School, migrating the historical data, cleaning up the errors, setting the security roles so only the right people can see a student's medical history.
Yes, all of that.
If that digital backbone is broken, teachers can't take attendance, parents can't see grades, and the state won't send the checks.
But setting up this massive digital nervous system exposes a huge blind spot in education. You can have the safest physical building in the state. You can purchase the most robust, expensive student information system on the market. But if the person sitting at the front desk doesn't know how to operate it, or worse, compromises it, none of that infrastructure matters. Software does not run itself.
Which brings us to the third major pillar of Lofton's career: human capital and workforce development. Recognizing that exact vulnerability, she founded Office Manager University, or OMU for short.
Yeah, OMU is fascinating.
And the profile notes, this is one of the first comprehensive online learning platforms dedicated exclusively to school office administration.
It is actually a registered apprenticeship program, which indicates a level of professional rigor you rarely see applied to administrative training in schools. Often school secretaries are just handed a binder on day one and told, good luck.
Exactly. And she even authored a book called The School Secretary's Playbook, a guide for every secretary, taking all this real-world experience and turning it into a practical, repeatable framework.
It's so needed.
But here is where I really had to stop and push back a bit when I was reading through the curriculum she developed for OMU. So what does this all mean? Alongside the expected topics like administrative excellence, customer service, time management, records management, the curriculum explicitly includes artificial intelligence and cybersecurity.
Yes, it does.
My immediate thought was, isn't that the IT department's job? Why is the school secretary learning how to prompt a large language model or spot a network breach? It feels like it completely redefines the role. You expect a school secretary to learn about customer service and records management, but cybersecurity and artificial intelligence.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it does redefine the role, and it is a completely necessary evolution. Consider the reality of a modern school front office. The people sitting at those desks are the ultimate gatekeepers.
Right.
And I don't just mean they buzz visitors in and out of the physical front doors. They are the gatekeepers to incredibly sensitive, highly regulated data.
We are talking health records, custody documents, social security numbers. I mean, it's everything.
Everything. Financial information for free and reduced lunch programs, special education psychological evaluations, staff disciplinary records. A school's database is an absolute goldmine for malicious actors.
It makes me so nervous.
As it should. When a cyber attack happens, like a ransomware attack that locks down a district's servers, hackers rarely target the IT director.
Really?
Yeah, the IT director has firewalls and multi-factor authentication. The hackers target the front office. They send an urgent-looking email disguised as a vendor invoice or an angry parent, hoping that a stressed, overwhelmed secretary who is dealing with that 8:5 a.m. rush will reflexively click a malicious link.
Wow. The person dealing with the most human chaos is simultaneously the most vulnerable point of entry for a sophisticated digital attack.
Exactly, the vulnerability. So training these office professionals in cybersecurity isn't overkill. It is deputizing the front office staff as the very first line of digital defense. If they can spot a phishing email, they protect the entire district's infrastructure.
That makes perfect sense when you put it like that. But what about the artificial intelligence piece? Why do they need AI?
Because of the crushing administrative burden. The expectations placed on schools are higher than they have ever been, and there simply aren't enough hours in the day.
That's for sure.
Imagine that office manager on a Tuesday morning. They need to draft a newsletter about an upcoming food drive, summarize a complex new parking policy for parents, translate a behavioral notice into 3 different languages, and respond to 20 emails about an upcoming field trip.
All while answering the phone and buzzing people in.
Right. If you train that office manager to safely and ethically use AI tools to generate those drafts in 3 minutes instead of 3 hours, what are they doing with the rest of their time?
They're actually looking up at the kid standing in front of them who just scraped their knee. They're dealing with the human beings.
They are reclaiming their human bandwidth. They can focus on the deep relational work that a machine can never do, like comforting a sick child or de-escalating a frustrated parent in the lobby. Integrating AI transforms the role from basic data entry to true operational leadership.
It is empowering them. Goes back to that idea of building a system where people can actually thrive instead of just barely surviving the day. And the sheer effectiveness of this framework is obvious when you look at her geographic impact. The source material notes she has supported organizations across Ohio, Indiana, Tennessee, and all the way to Japan.
Which highlights a universal truth in organizational behavior. No matter where you are in the world, the operational friction of running a school is largely the same.
That's fascinating.
The local laws might change. The specific software interfaces might look different in Tokyo than they do in Cleveland. But the fundamental need for tight enrollment systems, accurate student records, and empowered, highly trained administrative staff is universal. The fact that a methodology developed in the American Midwest is applicable to a school in Japan speaks to the fundamental soundness of Lofton's approach to human capital.
It proves that brilliant operational design translates anywhere. Looking at all of this, the sheer grit required in the startup phase, the massive digital compliance networks, the advanced workforce training for the front desk, I want you, the listener, to take a second and think about your own workplace.
Yeah, it applies everywhere.
Think about the La'Shelle Loftons in your own industry. Who are the operational strategists in your world? The people who build the invisible systems, who untangle the compliance nightmares, and who physically map out the workflows that allow the front-facing talent to actually shine. Because whether you are dealing with teachers, software engineers, salespeople, or doctors, the frontline talent can only be as good as the back-office infrastructure supporting them. Imagine your top salesperson trying to close a deal if the CRM software is broken, the phones are down, and the building is locked.
That is the core takeaway here. In fact, Lofton's own professional philosophy, which is quoted directly in the executive profile, synthesizes this perfectly. She states, "Successful schools are built on strong systems, empowered professionals, and operational excellence."
I love that quote.
But she doesn't stop at the systems. The ultimate goal of all of this, the fire inspections, the EMS reporting, the cybersecurity training is, as she puts it, to allow educators to focus on what matters most, student success. The operations are not the end goal, they're the vehicle. You build a flawless back office so that a teacher never has to worry about whether the lights will stay on, whether the funding will arrive from the state, or whether a student's private data is secure. You build the machinery so that the teacher can just teach.
You handle the complex organizational reality so the teacher can live in that cinematic ideal of education we talked about at the very beginning of the show. It completely shifts how you view a school building. Which leaves us with one final thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. Considering how deeply modern schools now rely on these intensely complex data systems, strict cybersecurity protocols, and rigorous financial compliance networks, how much longer will we continue to view school leadership purely through an academic lens? When are we going to universally recognize that running a school is just as much a demanding exercise in corporate and digital operations as it is in pedagogy? Because once you see the hidden machinery behind a successful school, you realize that the magic in the classroom isn't just inspiration, it's infrastructure. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.